Hello everybody, I would like to make a soft disclaimer before the start of this video. This video was unplanned and I went through hell to make it. The story kept updating and I kept having to re-record my lines a bunch, so that may end up showing in the final video. Also, it should be noted sometimes I might talk about things like they hadn't already happened. I think I fixed that in most of the scripting sections, but it might come off like that sometimes, but this video was very much written as the situation came out, so that might show in the final thing. I just want to let you all know. Also, while I will be showing screenshots for a good amount of the stuff, for the protection of some people and for other reasons, I will not be showing screenshots for the big situation that this video talks about. And just to spoil the video, that big situation is the Fiznom one, which you probably already knew that because that's kind of the talk of the town right now for FNAF. Last but not least, when we get to the Fiznom part, I will not be bringing up the stalker in the situation. For people who don't know, Fiznom had a stalker. The stalker tried to take advantage of the situations not once but twice, and that was something that got pretty hardcore, you know, because like the stalker was doing way too much, which of course that's typically what stalkers do, but yeah, just for the sake of it, I'm not going to be talking about that much in this video, so I'll give it this mention in this little disclaimer section. So that was one thing that happened. It definitely contributed to a lot of the stress that Phil was having, and yeah, that is the most I'm going to talk about it. And with that said, let us get into the main video. Hello everybody, it's your boy, Mr. Uploads when he wants to, making a quick video that's not actually going to be that quick. So a few months back, I made my Fanverse video. It was a video that was hopeful, happy, was super excited for the things coming, and wanted to be a change of pace for all videos that were based on the Fanverse at the time. But holy shit, do we got a lot to talk about now. So here we go, Unplanned Part 2, here we come. Before we get to the elephant in the room, let's first talk about the good things, as there's actually been quite a lot of good stuff for the Fanverse since the original video. So, let's quickly go over it. Pop Goes! It seems the Fanverse has gotten a slight expansion when it comes to the games that were on it, as Pop Goes is now getting a Tamagotchi-inspired spin-off called My Pop Goes. This is a side project being handled by someone else, with Kane seeing over it seemingly, and it will be canon to the series' lore. It looks cute, and I can't wait to see what comes of it. We've also got a ton of teasers and gameplay reveals for this game, and holy shit, can we talk about how nightmare-inducing this damn balloon boy is? Holy shit. Five Nights at Candy's! FNAF remains one of the more quiet games in the Fanverse, but it's probably better that way. We have gotten some more reveals for it thankfully, and boy, they look amazing. But just like Pop Goes, it seems like there's been an official expansion for this part of the Fanverse, as now there will be a new spin-off game called FNAF Fur. This game will also be a more lighthearted side game in the same vein as games like Freddy in Space 2 and FNAF World, although the game itself is more of an expansion to a mini-game that was in Five Nights at Candy's 3. I'm really looking forward to this, as these more fun fan games have been golden so far. Pop Goes Arcade is still my favorite fan game. And hey, if all goes well, Emil might even make a revamped FNAF 2, which, considering that game is pretty much universally considered the weakest game in the Candy series, it would be a nice thing to have. Also, unrelated, but since this news ain't big enough to have its own segment, if everything goes perfectly, there might be a chance that Chase, a project that Emil and Kane thought about before, will also be a part of the Fanverse, since they said Scott was really down for the idea. So hey, that would be neat if it came out. Joy of Creation! Joy of Creation, if you may recall, was in an interesting state when the Fanverse came out. Simply put, Nixon couldn't really focus on the Fanverse as much because he had obligations with another studio, and that took up nearly 2 years of the Fanverse's existence. But damn, my guy got to work once he was finally free from those shackles, and we've gotten plenty of stuff for Joy of Creation since. Although it should be noted, the game has technically been downsized since we last heard of it. Before, it was going to be Classic Mode, Story Mode, and I think Reborn? But now the Classic Mode is seemingly scrapped. The reasons listed were to make the game come out faster and reduce the price tag. And maybe because all of the modes, the Classic Mode was the one that probably people were looking forward to the least, so I get it. If it's not worth the hassle, why do it? I'm still here having to wait for the console ports, cause no way in heck my computer can run this shit. That's just not happening. Why not have Flumpties? Yeah, I know, we wouldn't think there would be something to update here, but why not? Yeah, so, Egg Collection sure as hell didn't come out. It's probably been silently cancelled. Like, to somewhat spoil what we're gonna talk about soon, WNAF has somewhat come back into talking with the recent news, which we'll get to, with people pointing out that John seemingly didn't get the same lambasting as the person we are gonna talk about soon got. That's because most of the WNAF stuff that the Fanverse released was already out when John got exposed, so maybe there's a weird technicality that's keeping all of that stuff up. But either which way, it's been 2 years since then, and the Egg Collection has not been seen or updated since. Which most likely means they're canceling it or shelving it for now, just so that way it's like, okay, what's done is done, but let's just not do anything further. One of those situations, you know? So yeah, that's all of the major updates each game in the series has got. If you notice that I have forgotten someone, there's a reason for that. We'll get to it. But first, let's talk about new merch. So in the first video, we were getting the first drifts of merch when it came to the Fanverse, but now, the Fanverse is becoming just a normal part of the FNAF merch cycle. As Pop Goes has quite a bit more U-Tune stuff, even Candy's got some more U-Tune stuff now. We got a pin set, a plushie, a long plushie, another pin set coming soon. Candy's and Pop Goes have Hex plushies. We've gotten implications of more to come. And Joy of Creation is even getting some U-Tunes plushies, so hey, that'll be really cool. But now, it's time to get to one of the main reasons this video was made. Kane controversies! Yep, whereas before all the Fanverse controversies were not necessarily the Fanverse developers' fault, with the exception being the Jonachrome and the Fiznom one to an extent, but we'll get to it. It seems like the Fanverse people were like, man, we are objectively kind of innocent here. Let's ruin that! That pun was not intentional, I am so sorry. Yeah, so Kane, the sort of self-appointed figurehead of the Fanverse, has had a really big problem lately. Bro doesn't know when to just shut up. Legit, felt like every other week the guy would get into a big Twitter shit because of reasons that were admittedly kind of petty, but would end up getting dragged out because the guy would double down on it. There's a few I could mention, but I'll just talk about the two biggest ones. Mangle's gender and Markiplier. The Mangle's gender one was Kane making a tweet saying that basically Mangle's gender is boy or girl because the answer was yes. People took this the wrong way and started hurling the entire zoo at him. He tried to defend himself by doubling down. This made people feel even worse, and they just drew an entire cavalcade of shit at his way. And this ended up being a cycle of people being mad at Kane and Kane not making anything better. This is a good way to summarize most of Kane's controversy. He says something he doesn't think about, people get angry, he either doubles down or explains himself horribly, people get even more mad. This cycle reached its giant peak, however, when Kane noticed that in a Markiplier stream, Markiplier said that he never heard of FNAF Plus. And Kane made a tweet that implied that he thinks Markiplier should be more promotive of the Fanverse and that he's shocked that his team never told him more about it. This came off as pretty beggy from Kane's side, admittedly. He's always been, like I said, the self-appointed figurehead of the Fanverse, kind of because no one else wants to be. Like, Emil and Nixon are just kind of chilling, and we'll get to the other one soon. I promise. And Jonachrome, well, we'll kind of get to him. Anyways, the situation arguably got the most attention for one reason and one reason alone. Markiplier replied! And just one simple sentence was enough to just boom. Fucking Kane was dead. His reputation for the day was dead. Holy shit, I honestly kind of feel bad for Kane to a certain extent. On one hand, sure, he was being annoying, but on the other hand, holy shit, if I was on the receiving end of this, I think I'd die. Like, I would just keel over right off the bat, because I am not recovering from this. Honestly, I'm shocked Kane even, had this done in his head, because sure, Markiplier still plays games on his channel, and he still plays the new FNAF releases, but he's not exactly a game analyst or hype man. So I don't know what Kane was thinking, because Markiplier isn't the kind of YouTuber who would make a video about the Steam page. Dawko, that's the type of YouTuber who would make a whole video on the page, because he's more speculative and analytical than Markiplier. Maybe Markiplier would play the game when it came out, but that's it. Honestly, to an extent, it is sort of surprising that Markiplier hasn't played any of the fan games yet. He didn't play Pop Goes Arcade, though I don't think he played the original, and he definitely didn't end up playing 1/2 3, and that's the surprising one. My only guess is he probably didn't know it existed until after the Jonachrome thing, and as a result, he didn't play it after that. But yeah, that's a good summary of the biggest Kane stuff. I don't think he's this unforgivable, unredeemable fuckboy. I think his main problem is just one thing. Bro needs to learn to back off sometimes. It's really not that serious. Anyways, let's talk about a minor controversy. And I say that because of who we're talking about. Jonachrome has kept things pretty low since his original exposure. It seems like behind the scenes he keeps trying to find his good spot to come back, and each time realizes this ain't the time. Maybe at this point he's realized there's never gonna be a good time. Trust me, Jonachrome, if Minilad proves anything, it's that the internet never forgets, and that you're done. Finito. All you can do is come back, stick fingers in your ear, and say la la la, as people keep saying the shit you did, and companies stop working with you. Sleep Live, someone we'll talk about kind of soon, said that apparently John came really close to coming back, but changed his mind. Hopefully it stayed that way. On that note, Lady Fitzy. Lady Fitzy was never a part of the Fanverse. She's been doing official art for the series for nearly half a decade now, if not closer to a decade. Oh my god. But she was always a controversial figure for her art not being that great, and just the holy shit amount of things she did behind the scene. Anyways, it was discovered she made a super creepy fanfic about a pastiche of William Afton doing horrific things to a minor. And I'm not just talking about the killings, but well actually, off topic, how the fuck is this such a thing that keeps happening? Like, we got the Dormitibus thing, if you know, you know. Apparently there was another fan game that someone tried to add the same plot point to, and now Lady Fitzy. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but can a child murderer just be a child murderer? Why the fuck do people keep adding this fucking sexual part? 3 times! How the fuck have 3 different people had this idea? And how the fuck was one of them official? I don't get it! Alright, let's get back on topic. Anyways, and it was in a creepy amount of detail, and it was pretty plain disturbing to see that this wasn't just something she did for shock value, but seemingly might have been a little bit of a kink she had. Needless to say, Scott had no patience for it. He fired her and made a public announcement about it. People were happy that she got her comeuppance, especially since she was caught for a bunch of other things as well. Now why am I bringing this up? It's important for the final 2 controversies. Because one is bouncing off of it, and the other is a full circle of this. Let's get into the first one now, Death King updates. I'll make this quick because there's a lot more videos on Death King now than there were when I made my first video. So firstly, when Lady Fitzy got fired, Death King decided to make it oddly personal about people being happy she got fired. And trying to be a big man for a situation that didn't need one. He kept saying that you shouldn't be happy someone got fired, oh, you shouldn't revel in this, rah 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 rah. And he got clowned on because it was ridiculous that of all things he thought were too far and unjust, this was it. Especially considering everything he did, but oh boy! Did we have no idea what would happen next. So to skip a few things, there was a chat with Sleep Live and a few ex-mods of Death King. One of the people got Death's email and wanted to leak it. Most of the chat said no, don't do that, but the person, and I think 1 or 2 more, did it anyways. Anyway, so you think Death King would condemn these people and we would all move on? No! Death decided that in this situation where he was for once the innocent party who didn't deserve what happened, to make himself the villain of the story! He basically pinned the entire thing on Sleep Live and made it seem like Sleep Live did all of this on purpose, when, of all people, it was the one who could very easily be confirmed had no idea what was going on. He was literally asleep when everything went down. This situation got super bad for Death King. Not only was the FNAF community calling out for this, but this actually escaped into the general YouTube commentary scene in general. This made Death King go from a controversial FNAF community figure to a controversial figure in general. And it's kind of satisfying seeing the whole internet get to see how much of a fuckboy we've had to deal with for the last year. But enough about that. Now, it is time to talk about the big thing. I low-key talked about these last 2 controversies to avoid talking about this one, but we can't avoid it anymore. Fiznom. In my original video, I was very kind to Fiznom. He kept his head out of most controversy, he wasn't involved in most of it, hell, with the Jonachrome situation, he was the only one publicly talking about it, and even though I thought he handled his security breach opinions were horrifically unprofessional, it wasn't anything to say he was a horrible person get fucked. But oh goodness. Okay, so it should be said that Fiznom was always a bit of a controversial figure in terms of the community. His toxic persona, despite apparently not being too accurate to his IRL personality, is still how he presented himself online. And frankly, it doesn't matter if it's a bit. Being an asshole is still being an asshole. People also talked about one time where he got on Doggo's case about playing a baby game for babies, and Doggo just body slams him into the dirt. Of course, nowadays Doggo and Phil are a lot more chill, but you know the drill with the internet. You do one bad thing, and all the bad things you've ever done get discovered. Him being toxic on FNAF Reddit back in the day, and a lot more people were saying how weird it is that he was making a fan game despite making his whole personality becoming how much he hates the series. Now, what was the catalyst for people bringing up his past so much? Well, it's story time. Ruin came out and for some reason people wanted Fiznom to play it, and my guy made it his mission to seemingly make the viewing experience as horrible as possible. He was very clearly going into the game with the mindset of hating it, and people pointed out that he was on Aaron Hansel levels of playing the game poorly, seeing if he could glitch the game out and then not succeeding, skipping dialogue and cutscenes, and just in general, seeming like he was just not even giving the game a single chance and making the game look as bad as possible. He even kind of started lambasting his audience for getting him to play this game, and that's just not cool. This actually got a lot of people to say that the stream wasn't fun to watch. Even Fiznom's own friends shared this sentiment. But oh boy, when it all came to a head, he made this tweet. Honestly, if it was left at this, I wouldn't talk about it. Even though the stream was awful, it's still just his opinion. Sure, he's handling it super unprofessionally, and he's definitely trying to rile people up, especially with a tweet like this, but it's still just his opinion, and as long as Scott doesn't care and doesn't do anything about it, I guess there's nothing wrong here. I still would share the sentiment that he should probably learn to not be this blunt with it if he wants to get work in other places, but at least for this situation, it didn't seem like that bad of a thing. However, Fiznom kinda went full asshole mode. No, seriously. And he made this tweet. First off, let's assume this is a joke, which it probably is considering what happened next. It's the most holy shit do you just hate your audience joke I've ever seen in my life. This is some Michael Bay levels of not even hiding how much utter contempt you have for your audience. This is some real, fuck you for being excited for this thing I made tweet I've ever seen. And that's if it's a joke. He actually replied to the thing to correct himself, which implies that there is at least somewhat less of a joke to it, and a little hint of seriousness to it. Even though this was definitely a joke, any publisher who actually cares what their employees are doing would have fucking busted down that guy's door and be like, you better be fucking joking. If the next words out of your mouth ain't, it was a joke, we've got a lot to talk about. But alas, this tweet is nothing compared to what Fiznom would do next. So, there was definitely people memeing on Fiznom's original tweet, and I mean, can you blame them? The tweet reeks give me attention and anger, so it makes sense people would meme on it. However, Fiznom's fans, and I said that in quotation marks, were sending one of the people who I've chosen not to show because of how this ended up, death threats, gore videos, and a ton of shit. Obviously, this got a lot of people to go to Fiznom and be like, hey, can you address this? And instead of doing the rational thing and saying, hey, cut that shit out, and apologizing to the person, he decided to keep up his persona. He was joking about the situation, memeing on it, and it took a fellow game developer, Doggo, to be like, hey yo buddy, you gotta treat this a little more seriously than your past situations. That's when he finally made a response that was just way too little, way too late. No, seriously, it was just saying, basically, I'll block whoever does that. It's like, bro, you'll block someone if they look at you wrong. Saying that don't mean a single thing. And he never really apologized for it truly when the situation was first happening. This got a lot of backlash from the community. His opinions on Ruin just became the first domino because it was completely irrelevant by now. It just showed people that he cannot humble himself for a second. He doesn't truly understand when he needs to cut the fucking act. He showed his true colors in that moment, where something so simple was so alien to him, and he never did. People contacted Scott about this, and while it took a few days, it happened. Well, it's time for the update. When I originally scripted this video, it was only shown that FNAF Plus page had Fiznom wiped out of them. 2 days later, we learned basically the full story. To make a long story short, Scott and Phil seemingly reached an agreement for Fizz to step down and be terminated from the Fanverse, and FNAF Plus as a whole. He also seemingly has been forbidden about talking about the FNAF franchise going forward. He can no longer talk or answer questions about FNAF Plus, or even really acknowledge the FNAF series as a whole. Hell, he had to take down his past fan games and his past videos based on FNAF. No, seriously, while I'll try to be serious for this section, a part of me can't help but find it super ironic that FNAF Plus started with Fiznom having to take a game down because of Scott telling him to. And now, he had to take everything that he's ever made FNAF related because Scott told him to. Fiznom made a video about everything, and honestly, it was a good response. But that comes with an asterisk. Fiznom's video is not an apology as much as it's an explanation for his actions, which I've always personally felt is different from excusing your actions. It's like a huge admittance to his flaws as a person, his mindset when it comes to things, his POV for the situation, and it definitely has him realizing a lot of places he went wrong, and even had him be more respectful to the victim and choosing not to show their face, nor their tweets on the matter. For the record, I will be doing the same. Now, let me get to that asterisk though. See, Phil points out that he never wanted to be a beacon, and he never wanted to be seen as someone bigger than he was. He low-key was more okay with people hating him than loving him because he didn't want to be a pillar of the community. He just wanted to be someone you watched, maybe played a game he made, and not really think too much about him. This is why he's never tried too hard to be professional or do the right thing. But my thing about all this is, why have this mindset and go for professions where you're naturally going to be in the public eye? Wanting to be more of a hermit with content creating is one thing, but entering positions where interaction is key just comes off as self-destructive with this mindset. Hell, he even somewhat admits that, and full-on admits that someone of his mentality should not have been given his position he was in. I'm sure if Fizz could turn back time, he probably would have just said no to the deal in general to save himself the stress. It seems he thought he was more emotionally mature / ready to take on this task, but then realized he wasn't. I can somewhat feel pity for him. But this is as far as my sympathy goes for the matter that, regardless of realizing that you weren't ready for the position, it doesn't change that he had it and horribly misused it. If he would have just cut the act, none of this would have happened. If he knew to behave himself, none of this would have happened. If he just looked at himself and realized that regardless of this mindset, you can't act like you don't have the position that you have, this wouldn't have happened. And if being that much of an asshole online is that core to your DNA, that cutting that act for a little bit and making an attempt to be professional was that hard for you, then I don't know what to tell you. It's a fundamental flaw of your personality and one that you couldn't control when you needed to the most. So as a result, I don't really feel too much pity about him losing his position on FNAF Plus. He was his own worst enemy, and I hope this experience humbles him and teaches him a lot of things. Should be noted, he will be taking a break from social media for the foreseeable future, at least a few months, and well, his time with FNAF is literally over. He literally cannot discuss the franchise going forward legally. And if it means anything to Fiznom's fans who may be watching this video, he himself doesn't really seem to be distraught about his consequences. Hell, he even admitted that he probably should, considering 3 years of work just went down the drain, but it seems he's taken the loss on this one. It seems he's more relieved that he doesn't have to take on this position that honestly seems like it was doing more harm to him mentally than good. I hope Philip matures emotionally and starts doing things that make him feel happier. It feels like he was trapped via making a decision he didn't realize he was ready for, and while I somewhat sympathize with that, I still think he got what he deserved. Heck, if you want my personal opinions, and I'm going off script for this, a lot of other companies probably would have fired him way sooner based on his conduct alone, let alone a situation like this. Those are my final thoughts on the matter. As for FNAF Plus itself, yeah, so, the Steam page was taken down, so it's more than likely the game is just gonna get cancelled. As Johnny Blocks in his video said it best, Phil was mostly working by himself, and no one else at the Fanverse or working on the franchise in general really knows how to work Game Maker Studio, as mostly everyone else uses ClickTeam, and Steelwool is too busy with other shit. Some people have said that this is too brutal of a punishment, and all I have to say to that is, this is not that uncommon for the industry as a whole. People get picked off projects when they're bad representatives of the brand. That's just what happens. Phil was going too far, and Scott and Phil came to the conclusion, and they did what they did. Sure, maybe 3 years of work is down the drain, but when you can't be professional and can't control yourself, that's what happened. Honestly, a lot of companies might have fired Phil sooner, considering companies care a lot more about what people who work for them say than a lot of people realize. His conduct alone probably would have gotten him fired in most other jobs, let alone a situation like this. Hell, I went on a whole tirade about this, but this tweet, joke or not, would get you fucking eviscerated in some companies. But enough about that. Fiznom is out, and FNAF Plus is likely gonna go on the Lost Media Wiki any day now. I will say, this doesn't completely kill my hype for the Fanverse. FNAF Plus may have been one of the most exciting things to come out of it, but honestly, it was never my end-all be-all. Hell, I wasn't even exactly planning on playing it. I was more excited to watch people play it for me. I mean, I think we can all kind of admit, looking back, the game definitely was maybe trying a bit too hard to be an edgier FNAF. Well, at least with how edgy being in the Fanverse would allow it to be. But yeah, there's plenty more stuff with Fanverse going on. We got Pop Goes, Joy of Creation, FNAC, you know, and Chase might be back on the menu, so like, and controversy aside, 1.5.3 was still a good game as long as you can separate art from artists. And the game's free on Game Jolt, so John didn't get that much from it anyways. I do have to ask though, I wonder what Scott's current opinion on the Fanverse is. I'm sure he doesn't regret it, as there's still plenty of good to be done here, and I'm sure that he wouldn't want to just end the whole thing in particular. But damn, this guy must be feeling hella stressed right now, as he had to publicly... Okay, fine, he fired Lady Fitzy, and Fiznom and him just came to a conclusion, but that's still two people you had to let go willingly in the same year that got pretty public. Both people were working on things full-on named Five Nights at Freddy's too, so I'm sure he might have had his fair share of disappointment on that front. All of this I have to say it is, bro, Scott, can you just pay more attention to what the people you are hiring are doing in public? Like, holy shit, my guy. On one hand, I respect letting everyone do their own thing approach, but on the other hand, it's clearly having its downside. Anyways, that'll be all for this video. Once again, sorry if it was all over the place. I've had to change the script countless times. I hope you enjoyed. I'm really excited for the Fanverse going forward, despite what this video may made it seem. And I hope I don't have to make a part 3 for anything more than positive stuff. Alright, see you later.